to the Interagency Council for ending the achievement gap for our July 19th, 2021 virtual meeting. Greetings to all of our council members, and we are hereby called to order. And as usual, we've got a very packed schedule. So what I'd like to do is just say that I hope everybody's having a great summer, and we're grateful for everyone's service to the council. And we're looking forward to seeing some of our progress play out during the upcoming school year. So why don't we, we're going to have the roll call, but I will say that our discussion today is about school administrators and teachers. I know that so many people have new respect and appreciation for our hardworking teachers who are educating our young people. They've worked very hard to find ways to keep our students engaged, which I know was difficult given all of the challenges that we had in our remote learning environment, and given all of the social, emotional, and health challenges that we had during the pandemic. So as we enter this new school year, we know that so many of our students, some more than others, are playing catch up in their studies. And so the role of our teachers and school administrators is critically important, not only to help our students return to the classroom for a full year, but also to close the gaps created by COVID on top of those that we have been working to close prior to the pandemic. So as always, our work as a council remains so relevant and important. And I just want to thank our partners at the State Department of Education, particularly Acting Commissioner Charlene Russell Tucker, Kari Sullivan, and John Frasinelli for all that they are doing, and all of the work that everyone involved in this group is doing. So with that, Kari, can you please move on with the roll call so that we can confirm everyone's attendance today?
Absolutely. I just want to remind folks that we are live streaming on CTN and YouTube, so you are being recorded. So Connecticut State Colleges and Universities.
Stephen Hegedus on behalf of Dr. Jane Gates, the Dean of the College of Education at Southern Connecticut State University.
Thank you. Department of Administrative Services. Department of Children and Families.
Hi, this is Michael Williams, Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Children and Families.
Thank you. Department of Economic and Community Development.
Good afternoon, Gwendolyn Thames, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you. Department of Housing.
Hi, good afternoon, Shante Hanks, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you. Department of Public Health.
Yes, this is Mario Garcia. I'm sitting in for the Commissioner Dietrich Gifford from the Department of Public Health.
Department of Social Services. Judicial Branch.
Sorry, this is DSS.
Oh, thank you.
My name is Astrid Farron-Poole. I'm sitting in for Commissioner Gifford as well.
Okay, thank you. And the Judicial Branch?
Hi, good afternoon. Patricia Nunez on behalf of Judge Patrick Carroll.
Office of Early Childhood.
Maggie Adair, sitting in on behalf of Commissioner Beth Bye.
Thank you. Office of Policy and Management.
Good afternoon, Holly Williams on behalf of Secretary Melissa McCaw.
Thank you. State Department of Education.
Thank you, Kari. Charlene Russell Tucker, Acting Commissioner of Education. And would the other team members from the department also introduce yourselves, please?
Hi, John Frasinelli, Division Director at SDE.
I'm Shwana Tucker, Chief Talent Officer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Todd, Bureau Chief in the Talent Office.
Thank you. And I'm Kari Sullivan from the Office of Student Supports. And I think that is the complete roll call, unless there's someone that I missed. Okay, Lieutenant Governor.
Thank you, Kari. We will now take a moment to review our agenda for today. And so we just completed opening remarks and roll call. And so we are going to open the floor shortly for updates on the topics we discussed at our last meeting. We are then going to review 3 new subjects and results statements from the Achievement Gap Task Force Master Plan. The first 2 matters fall within the overall umbrella of inside higher education, and they are Leaders That Close the Gap, Administrator Preparation and Development, and 2 highly effective teacher preparation programs. So both of these subjects will be led by Dr. Stephen Hegedus, Dean for the College of Education at Southern Connecticut State University. The final subject falls within the Inside the Schoolhouse umbrella, but is related to the first 2 subjects, and that is principal and teacher hiring and retention for schools that demonstrate persistent gaps. So this discussion is going to be led by Commissioner Russell Tucker from our State Department of Education. For these discussions, we're going to follow the same format as we did in our October and December meetings, where we address each policy recommendation and seek comments and input from other council members. We also plan to take real-time notes on the live screen as we share information. And as usual, your active engagement is what helps us move the work of the council forward. So please do not hesitate to jump in on any subject, or if you have any comments relative to our overall discussion today, even if it's not specific to the policy recommendation under review. Please also be candid about any concerns that you have with the recommendations. As we previously acknowledged, a lot has happened since the task force was created its report, and we want to make sure that we appropriately address changed circumstances, fiscal issues, and any other reasons why we need to highlight recommendations for reconsideration. After the review of the policy recommendations, we will discuss next steps, including the remainder of our 2021 meeting schedule. So does anybody have any questions about our agenda today? All right, so seeing none, we're gonna follow up from our last meeting, and we will move on to the follow-ups. We met on March 17th of this year when we reviewed housing, family engagement, and inside the schoolhouse, school climate, and the achievement gap. The minutes of the meeting were circulated to the council in draft form for your review. Those minutes included some of the items noted for follow-up in the March meeting and have since been updated with additional information and posted on our interagency council website. Follow-up items in the minutes include information from Commissioner Russell Tucker showing the 7 ways that our State Department of Education is leading in social emotional learning. And there's an active link to this resource included on page 27 of the minutes. Second, information from Doug Casey at DAS on our progress in closing the home connectivity gap. Links to these materials are on page 29 of the minutes. And finally, also included in the minutes are links to Unite CT on page 11, which is our emergency rental assistance program. 2, we have a comprehensive guidebook to help municipalities with affordable housing projects on page 8, which was noted by Deputy Housing Commissioner Shante Hanks. So many thanks to everyone who submitted follow-up information to us for inclusion in the minutes and circulation to council members. So I'm going to ask now if there's anyone that has any additional updates on the matters we addressed in March, because now would be your opportunity to add anything. So I am not seeing anybody with their hands raised for follow-ups. So I'm going to ask if there are any edits to the updated March minutes. Ask if anybody has any changes or objection to accepting the draft minutes as final minutes. And I am not seeing any objectors. So seeing that, no one has any additions or deletions to propose, we're going to finalize the March 17th minutes.
I just have a small one addition, if I may, Lieutenant Governor. With Doug, there was an event, I think it is relevant to Doug Casey, and I don't know if Doug is on the line. He invited me and a few others to take part in a round table that was hosted by Governor Patrick, Deval Patrick as well, and he made points around closing home connectivity there. It was focused on education and technology. It was about a month ago, and I think it is maybe just another example of the work we're trying to do in impact policy largely. And Doug arranged that.
Great. All right, we will add that. Okay, anybody else have anything they would like to add? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the annual report that we do to our state legislature. We're going to briefly review the annual report. Our last report was delivered on July 1st, 2020. And since then, we've had 4 meetings, including this one, October 30th, 2020, December 10th, 2020, March 17th, 2021, and today's July 19th, 2021. So the report summarizes the discussion topics for each meeting and notes which council member led the discussion on each of the subject matters. And we've also included links to the meeting minutes for each of the meetings prior to today, and note that the ones for this meeting will be available shortly. So we include, as part of our update, that we had a guest speaker from LEGO Systems, and that was Skip Kodak. Skip is the EVP of Americas, who shared with us some of LEGO's initiatives to strengthen equitable early childhood development programs and its contributions to culturally responsive curriculum that focuses on skills development. We also highlight the Fatherhood Initiative as a program that was effective in addressing multiple concerns raised in the task force report. And finally, we note our intention to meet again in September and December and cover the remaining topics from the report. So I wanted to see if anybody has any questions or comments about the annual report to the legislature. All right, so I'm not seeing any. So we're going to plan to circulate the report in draft form shortly after the meeting. So if anybody has any questions or edits, I'll get them to Kari Sullivan and Cherie Phoenix Sharp by 4 p.m. on Thursday. We plan to deliver the report to the legislature on Friday, of this week or Monday of next week. So we are going to move on to today's review of the policy recommendations from the task force report, results statement and policy recommendations. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to focus on school teachers and administrators. And so we're going to go to, so Dr. Stephen Hegedus, who, as I mentioned, is the Dean of the College of Education at Southern, is with us today. And he's going to lead us in a discussion on our first two subjects, which are both exploring matters inside higher education. And the first is leaders that close the gap, administrator preparation and development. The results statement for this subject is all principals and administrative leaders will be prepared to work in schools with achievement gaps. And the second is highly effective teacher preparation programs. The results statement for this subject is all pre-service teachers accepted to teach in Connecticut schools will be trained in closing persistent gaps in academic achievement. So Dr. Hegedus, thank you so much for joining us today, and please do proceed.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor. I also wanted to note that Dr. Gates is with us now as well. Thank you. I'd like to start by saying that not only am I here with representing the response from the Connecticut State University System as well, but also I'm state chapter president of AACTE Connecticut, which is the American Association for Colleges of Teacher Ed, which is an organization of public and private universities in Connecticut that are involved in teacher and educator preparation. So some of the points that I make today are also a representative voice of what's been going on across all of our colleges and universities. And I think a lot of what I'll be summarizing in response also intersects a lot with the work of the State Department of Education. So our notes are somewhat interspersed. So I will pause for Commissioner or Dr. Tucker or whomever wishes to address the additional points that are made where relevant. Overall, the main point that we wish to make here is that we are very much committed to high quality preparation programs, both at the teacher and at the administrator level here in Connecticut. And we are very much aim to see many of the gaps reduced in our schools. The main point, though, is that not all of the work that we do is just solely focused on that. And since the task force convened, we are now accredited since 2016, there was a Senate bill that states that all colleges, all educator preparation programs must be nationally accredited by CAPE, which is the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation, national accrediting body. And so the standards in there, I will draw on some of those later on under various points where relevant. We're also subject to as well, in addition to certain statutory and regulatory requirements that evolve over time. So it is an important goal that we are committed to, but we're also obligated to many other agency and requirements and standards. So I think that it's worth mentioning that that this is part of our mission, and I will highlight when we're at specific points where we have to do even more. So that would be that's sort of my introductory statement. We will highlight some of the not just the standards that we are held to and we are meeting, but also some of the partnerships and also the initiatives that are either involved at our individual institutions or led by our State Department of Education. And there are various examples that are in there. I will say that I do think we have some ways to go. I think there needs to be a spotlight drawn on achievement gaps as well, and to think carefully about how we in higher ed can help, or at least enhance awareness of that within our programs. It is a broad link to go from preparation of teachers pre-service or in service to impacting achievement at the P12 student level. There are certain standards as well in our national accrediting agencies that look for impact. And I think there has been some concern that you can have a direct correlation between what is done prior to becoming a teacher and then during those years. There are many confounding variables that can impact that. And so I would, just in our introduction, just a plea for more conversation and discussion about strategies where we work closely together with our state agency, in particular in early childhood and in the State Department of Education. With response to the administrative preparation development, there's a note there that we have many of our educational leadership programs involve internship opportunities, and more opportunities for diverse settings are really necessary and required, and we manage to do that at times. There are other times when the students in our programs may not be able to get time to go and spend an internship opportunity in a different school setting than the one they're hired in, or in a different district. So there's a call there for sort of flexibilities, whether it's a leave or a support from school systems to enhance the internship opportunities, so that our future educational leaders, have that opportunity to work in different settings that they're presently employed in to address some of these gaps. I will pause there, and then as we go through, there are specific points where we respond to the policy recommendations.
So maybe I'll just jump in here, Dr. Hedigas, and
yes,
the Lieutenant Governor, thank you so much for just doing the shout out to our educators at the top of our meeting here. It's not lost on us this past year that, when we ended the school year, over 86 or so % of our districts were doing fully in-person learning, and with others in hybrid and none in remote. And so our students in Connecticut had the opportunity to get the benefit from in-person learning. And it was just the effort of our educators across our system. And so I can't say thank you enough to them. And so thank you for recognizing that as they go forward. As we go forward, I know folks are eager now to think about, as we think about, the new school year. And introducing to our team, when you heard the intros, Dr. Shawana Tucker is our Chief Talent Officer, with Chris Todd, who is our Bureau Chief, and they're so embedded in this work. I wanted to make sure, number one, they were here so I could thank them, but also to join the conversation. As Dr. Hedigas mentioned, as you go through the deck, you'll see interspersed the work that they're doing along with the department. And so I wanted to make sure that we could have a really great conversation. So you'll probably hear their voices jumping in as we go forward. So this is kind of my introduction of them, and I thank you. And certainly look forward to even stronger working relationship, as you've mentioned, because it's so critically important that we have really strong educators, right, administrators, and our teachers and others prepared for our students and working together so we can do that. Later on, we'll talk about how we worked on diversification of our workforce and share more information with you there. So I will pause there and turn it back to you to move us through the deck.
I believe there was notes just up. We've gone down one slide, I believe.
So you'd like me to go back one slide?
Schools of education will ensure. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So much of the work that has occurred with respect to this policy recommendation, which again is focused on internship experiences that allow future educational leaders to expose them to school settings where there are gaps in academic achievement has been done largely through strong working partnerships between our higher ed institutions and our local district offices, whether it's a group of superintendents or a regional alliance, particularly in urban settings. And a lot of the work there over the past 10 years has focused on personalizing instruction and thinking through very specific strategies that are oriented towards those needs of those districts. I work closely with superintendents here in the Greater New Haven region, and we meet quarterly. And a lot of those meetings are focused on the needs of those districts and how we can, as an Institute of Higher Ed, as an educator preparation program, provide a very specific strategies that can help address some of those needs. So there has been ongoing work within multiple settings across various institutions that wish to address it. But I also go back to my original opening remarks on the need to allow our aspiring leaders more access to and more internship opportunities to settings that will enhance their exposure and also their preparation as future leaders in those areas.
And I would like to just add, this is Shawana Tucker from the State Department of Education, and good afternoon, everyone. Steve, I would like to add the following to this policy recommendation. You spoke about CAPE accreditation earlier, that our EPPs must meet that. That's also aligned with the National Educational Leadership Preparation Standards, requiring that all of our candidates have diverse internship experiences. So through our funding, Wallace Foundation UPPI grant, UConn's UCAP program totally revised their internship during redesign of their overall program. And the redesign calls for intern experiences to align directly with coursework, core assessments in years 1 and 2, and all interns are supported by a leadership coach and a mentor principal. We also have 3 other APPs participated in the Quality Measures Principal Prep Self-Assessment Toolkit to measure quality of work and the areas of improvement around clinical practice. And to date, all 3 identified the need to improve clinical internships.
Are we ready to go to the next policy recommendation?
I would just edit. I think unless there's a new acronym I don't know. It said APP. Is it EPP or are they APPs that I don't know about in that slide?
Administrator Prep Programs.
Oh, it's the Administrator Prep Program, of course. Sorry. Yep.
That's all right.
I put them all under EPP, but.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. The next policy recommendation is focused on identifying failing, underperforming, or exhibiting persistent gaps in academic achievement. And those schools should be incentivized to engage in partnerships with Connecticut universities to provide internship experiences for aspiring principals and administrators. I think we've skipped a slide again.
I'm sorry, can I ask a quick question? I couldn't get my mic to unmute while you're trying to go back to that policy recommendation. I just wanted a point of clarification. Were you saying, and I believe it was Dr. Tucker, were you saying that in order for students to receive their 092 certification, that they would be required to do internships in these other districts?
Most EPPs have that already built in for their students to have internships within districts, urban and suburban. To have those experiences. They are built in and they're trying to enhance and improve those.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that goes, it's one more slide down. It will come up again with teacher preparation, where there are certain statutes required of our pre-service candidates to have a diverse set of experiences in urban and suburban settings. So at the top, I was pointing out that we it won't necessarily be a requirement to be in an urban setting or in a setting with a large achievement gap, but there certainly we'll look at the variety of experiences for our educational leaders programs. But I think it's about the language of what is required versus there's a hope or an aspiration in finding placements that can help in diversifying the set of experiences.
Dr. Hegedus, could you please read the beginning of the recommendation that you're referring to so I can select the right slide?
That was a question, I think, referring to what we just covered, but the next recommendation starts with Connecticut schools identified as failing, underperforming, or exhibiting. I think it's the next slide down.
There you are. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
To that recommendation, some of the work that has been occurring by faculty in our universities has focused on professional development activities. Sometimes these are outside of specific academic programs. They're extracurricular or they're involved in a professional development initiative in a district. The faculty have also worked with the Connecticut Associations of Schools, CS, and as executive coaches. And some of that work has led to partnerships where faculty as executive coaches can work with trainers to help facilitate some of these strategies and best practices in reducing achievement gaps. So this has been in addition to the preparation programs for our educators. And I believe SDU also has some specific initiatives that have been funded by grants that some of our institutions have been working with.
This is the slide with the SDE recommended responses.
Yep.
Yes. Through our work with the Wallace Foundation funding, we have partnered with Bridgeport Public Schools and faculty from Southern Connecticut State University as well as Sacred Heart University as part of a professional learning series around advancing equity and coaching for equitable practices. And here at the CSDE, we're reviewing the results of the partnership to inform future partnerships with districts and administrative prep programs moving forward. We do have CEDAR funds that were extended for another year, and that funding is from the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Ed Programs. We are working with our EPPs and our LEAs to develop and implement expanded partnerships around clinical placements. For the coming school year, the funds will be used to continue exploring innovative approaches and incentives for our administrative prep programs and district partnerships to develop aspiring administrators in those high-need districts.
We can move to the next recommendation unless there are questions. Yep. School districts with schools that are identified as failing. Thank you. This is a really important recommendation, looking very much at the focus on the role and the position of the assistant principal. And all too often, the assistant principal's function seems to be one that's focused on disciplinary actions involving suspensions and expulsions, which we know disproportionately affects students of color. And so over the past few years, again, there have been aims to ensure that an assistant principal's function is seen as more than that and to be very much more involved in community agencies and community engagement. I think this has become very much heightened in the past year, the past year and a half, through what we've experienced with distance learning. But I still feel there's a call for looking very carefully at the ongoing role of the assistant principal and how that impacts or can impact positively the various points that I've made just in the paragraph slightly above around standardized test scores and other areas of assessment. There has been also some institutes that have been run and with external speakers that I've noted up above around Connecticut Lead. And this is focused on building capacity within our school district administration teams as instructional leaders. That is, again, I think worth stressing the need to build capacity. It isn't just in higher ed preparation programs for educators, but the ongoing need to build capacity of teams and to be flexible with the ongoing needs of our school districts with respect to this topic.
So Dr. Hegedus, I'm going to just interject for a minute that today it was reported the very disparate vaccination rates that we have in our urban versus our suburban areas. And we know that the achievement gap is heightened in communities of color and in our urban areas. And, you know, I wanted to interject this because if we are concerned that if we have to go to remote learning, that we will lose even more ground. And so I'm wondering if we would like in our next meeting to talk about how schools can be the point that, or an advocacy point for helping families access vaccines, because I was just reading today that in Greenwich, where there is a very high percentage of 12 to 17-year-olds who have received vaccinations in Greenwich, because the Greenwich Public Schools had 3 different vaccination clinics so that students could get vaccinated. And meanwhile, we have urban areas where less than 30% of the children have been vaccinated, and there is also, you know, very low vaccination rates amongst adults. It seems to me that this is a huge issue, because if we have kids entering school in the fall that haven't been vaccinated and then they get sick, especially with the Delta variant, where doctors are now seeing kids that get COVID who have long haul symptoms, right, for a long time. So I think I'm going to make the suggestion that perhaps in our next meeting that we address this, and possibly Deidre Gifford or someone from her team could talk about that, but also, you know, we can brainstorm about who else would be good, because we need to get our kids ready for the fall. And it seems to me that this is just one of those things that is just so fundamental moving forward.
And I'll also add, Lieutenant Governor, and I know John has been working with DPH as well, around availability of clinics that are working with our schools on that. So John, I don't know if you just want to add quickly to that. We don't want to go off track, but I think, as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, it's an important topic.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Yes, we're working directly with DPH. As recent as this morning, we're talking about the development of a toolkit for districts to do outreach and provide some mobile clinics to a number of schools, and also working with schools to set up their own, working with them to set up their own clinics within their own schools to increase the vaccination rates, particularly in those communities where rates are low.
And I would just say that alliance districts are much more likely to be having summer school and educational opportunities for kids over the summer. So perhaps we can hear about which of the alliance school districts are, you know, are making use of these vaccination programs during the summertime, so that kids will be ready to enter school fully vaccinated next time we convene, because that'll be in September. So we'll want to hear more about it. And when Dr. Hegedus started mentioning the role of the assistant principal and community engagement, I don't think we get any more basic than community engagement in getting kids to be vaccinated. So thank you so much, and we can follow up on that for the next meeting.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I actually had a note for the agenda items later on to have a further discussion, I believe, about engagement at various levels, where it's family and community engagement, as well as the continuing partnership between our P12 systems and higher ed. I think those are all critical components. Having overseen a Gear Up program here at Southern as part of a CSCU grant, those times with parents on our campus over those 6 years prior to them entering college were critical and really made a difference along the way. The next policy recommendation starts with there will be a special seminar program.
We covered the Department of Ed recommendations are all set.
I would just add one thing to the policy recommendation, this one that starts with school districts, and that is that we really leverage the Wallace Foundation's UPPI funding and facilitated a collaboration between the Connecticut Association of Schools and the Connecticut Center for School Change to co-facilitate leadership simulations to provide an opportunity to discuss equity-based decisions, and those will be offered to our new administrators in the fall of 2021. And in addition to that, all 7 of our administrator prep programs have access to the School Sims Simulation Library, which serves as an additional resource to support our new administrators through December of 2023.
Any comments? So we'll move on to the next slide.
My apologies, Dr. Tucker. I skipped over that one slide. Yeah, very important work. We have seen actually during the COVID past few months, the use of mixed reality simulations has actually become an affordance, whereby and I think we should look at that and the investments of that, even as we become more on ground again and are in person with whether it's student teaching or whether it's leadership simulations. I think they've been extreme. There's been a lot of advancement in that area, in that technology. The only thing I have on my notes on the program is that, again, parental engagement is key. There have been a variety of programs, whether it's actually a special seminar, I'm not entirely sure, but certainly there are still efforts in this area, and we need to focus on policies that actually do close the gap, as well as just talking about it. So I pass it again to Dr. Tucker. I don't know if there's anything specific that you wish to mention.
Nothing specific. We've already covered CADE and NELP. Yep. Thank you.
The next one, next recommendation focuses on preparation of school administrators should include a focus on psychology of human behavior. Many of our programs, if not all, are grounded in theories and practices on the psychology of human behavior. Our programs enable future leaders to think about, not only think and know about these theories and strategies, but how they can best impact best practices in their schools. Several EPPs offer courses in organizational behavior as well, and those are then continued to be utilized in professional development and ongoing work within the school districts. We have also seen more of an infusion of leadership courses with effective strategies for ELLs and student education students, special education students. One of the members of the task force back in 2012 is a faculty member here, and has made specific courses that integrate these strategies that have been traditionally left out of leadership programs. We will come back to diversity and ELL in the teacher preparation slides later on. And the only other point I wish to highlight was around, which I put in the notes, ensuring again that the school is extended into the community and that leaders understand the importance of this and understand the importance of home visits and making those connections. Dr. Tucker, that is all I have to report out on Leaders That Close the Gap section.
And nothing further to add from the SDU.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions before we move to the teacher preparation programs? Okay, thank you. The overarching response to this section on highly effective teacher preparation program again goes back to since 2016 through a Connecticut Senate Bill 382. We are now part of the council, accredited by the Council for Accreditation of Educator Preparation. I put a link in there, and much of the standards that we are held accountable to are focused on diversity and rigorous assessments, and I will highlight some of those specific requirements when we get to the particular policy recommendations. Once again, I will say that we are committed in higher ed to quality programs and closing achievement gaps, but it is not just that we are focused on. And particularly our teacher preparation programs, there are many parts to our program, whether it's through statutory or regulatory requirements that we focus on in order to prepare our teachers to be ready day one. There is still more after they begin as teachers to learn and to advance their education and as they move through their induction period and onwards. So part of the concern with the statement that all pre-service teachers are accepted to teach in Connecticut schools will be trained in closing persistent gaps. It isn't as direct as that there are courses on how to close achievement gaps. There is certainly a commitment to addressing the complexity of that problem and the challenges of that problem in our school systems today through not only the coursework, but also the multiple opportunities, the internship opportunities that our teacher candidates go through. So that's our overarching response to that, to this section, and we can go into the specifics of the specific policy recommendations. The first one is focused on employing highly rigorous admission standards. Again, our statutes require our undergraduate academic performance to be a B- on average for all undergraduate courses. This equates to about 2.7 GPA for some institutions. Our CAPE requirements, our national accrediting requirements, require that the incoming cohort in each EPP averages 3.0 GPA. There are basic skills tests that are required, and the ones that we use need to be in our incoming cohort of students each year need to be in the 50th percentile, on the 50th percentile or above on a nationally normed assessment. I will say there has been, this is focused on standard 3.1. There has been a lot of resistance to this nationally in terms of calling for rigorous admission standards and then also ensuring that we have access and increase our numbers of minority students or students who do not perform well on standardized or nationally normed tests. So there is still much debate on that point in education. But there is a commitment through our institutions to use valid and reliable instruments to assess not only content knowledge, but also professional dispositions and attitudes. And we have here in Connecticut, we use the EdTPA program to evaluate student teachers and their performance. So there are a variety of assessments and also admission standards that our EPPs utilize to ensure highly rigorous and comprehensive admission standards.
Dr. Tucker, would you like to comment?
Yes. Understanding the requirements for entrance into our educator preparation programs is an area of focus for us at the SDE. We want to ensure that our students are better prepared. We have partnered with Phi Delta Kappa International to implement the Ed Rising initiative statewide, which is a proven grow your own model across the United States. We received a grant from the Buck Foundation this past school year, and we were able to work with 12 school districts. However, due to the pandemic, we had to shift our focus as most students were learning virtually. And we spent time providing professional development to the newly minted club and curriculum advisors. The Ed Rising program comes with a very robust curriculum for our teachers to use, and it has a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and social justice. We were able to partner, though, with several institutions of higher education who did offer dual credit courses to our enrolled students in 4 of our 12 districts in which they earned college credit. This was done virtually. We also held our first virtual statewide conference in March with expert presenters, including deans from our EPPs, and we hosted student competitions. I'm very proud to say that we had 581 students, advisors, and higher ed professionals that attended. CCSU was our lead sponsor, and we also collaborated with CEA, AFT, ETS, and others. And we have partnered also with ETS, Educational Testing Service, and we're now obtaining the practice test. The core test is now available for our Ed Rising students at the high school level to help prepare them for entrance into college, specifically into our EPP programs. And our EPPs have access to now request the Praxis Core Content Practice Test. To date, I have received about 7 EPP requests in very large volumes of content practice test for our currently enrolled students to ensure testing success, that hopefully they take the Praxis one time and they will pass it and graduate. We have been funded again a second year through Buck Foundation, and we will now expand our Ed Rising program this coming year to 18 districts with clubs and more dual credit offerings. We're going to focus on engaging more males to enter the education profession as well as EL students, as we want to diversify our educator workforce and to be more reflective of our current student population. We are in the process of working now to map out and develop a Connecticut education pathway for students that we seek to implement in the fall of 2022.
Thank you, Dr. Tucker. I had that just before you move on, Kari. There's an error in what I when it right at the top second bullet point. I know before someone accuses me of not knowing my standards. It's standard 3.2, not 3.1. Okay. Basically, for those not familiar, standard 1 is there are 5 standards. Standard 1 is focused on curriculum and aligning our curriculum to national standards. And standard 2 is focused on our clinical partnerships and practice, which is really critical in having a diverse set of experiences, in addition to our statutory requirements that says we have 4 semesters, often 4 different experiences, including the student teaching. And the standard 3, which was I was citing, is on selectivity and of our candidates and use of formative and summative assessments. Those are the main 3 standards that we have been focused on today. So I just wanted to give a quick synopsis of that. In addition to certain requirements here in our state to address socio-emotional needs and development, in addition to child and adolescent psychology. The next policy is require prospective teachers. Yeah, again, Not much more to add than what I've mentioned already, but again, there is a requirement to using valid and reliable instruments. Since our previous national accrediting agency, NCATE, there is a push to more rigor in the standards, and so we use a variety of assessments that are valid and reliable at our EPPs. I have nothing more to add than what's in the notes there.
Nothing else to add from STE. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. The next recommendation is focused on creating a mechanism by which pre-service teachers are able to develop strong working relationships with faculty. Thank you. Many of our institutions of higher ed are involved, if not all, in some form of district partnership or partnerships that are often reciprocal in nature. And I've certainly, in my time here in the States, it's been 7 years, seen a growth in these areas, particularly where there is some reciprocity in helping the talent pool and talent development within a district, and to expand leadership and leaders within districts as well. And so these are often memorandums of agreement between our universities and colleges and school boards or district offices, and this has often been very positive in its approach. We've also, many of us hire teachers or principals as adjuncts in our programs, again to enhance the working relationships with content area experts in schools as well. And there are a variety of grants and awards that EPPs have received to support this ongoing work, particularly in the areas of STEM. Southern and Sacred Heart and UConn have all received some form of the National Science Foundation's NOIS Awards that is about recruiting and retaining students in that area. Dr. Tucker, I think there's some specific initiatives that you needed to note.
Yes, I would just highlight that this recommendation is aligned with our work with CEDAR, as previously discussed, and that the ProGap tool, which is part of the CEDAR work, creates the diagnostic tool for our candidates really to look at EdTPA results and identify areas of need for continued growth within programs of study.
Next slide.
Our next policy is focused on requiring prospective teachers to acquire strong pedagogical content knowledge preparation. Thank you. Again, a lot of this links back to the standards outlined in our National Accrediting Agency, CAPE. Many of the assessments that we are used measure satisfactory levels of knowledge. Standards are aligned to the INTAS standards, the Interstate Teacher Assessment and Support Consortium, that are used in many states as national standards. Again, what we've seen occur within the standards world is that before there was more a checkbox approach, I would like to say, when it comes to evaluating how we are ensuring diversity. This is now, this was not sufficient. And so there is a cross-cutting theme focused on diversity, where we have to demonstrate a commitment to diversity in every program, in every standard that we're evaluated by, and in every program that the institution of higher ed offers. And so there is a lot more on how we address matters of diversity, whether it's looking at strategies for ELLs or special education. All EPPs are required to teach subject-specific methods courses. For some of the programs, this is often accompanied by a practicum experience that will then be where that candidate will do their student teaching in the subsequent semester. And again, requirements are there for our undergraduate programs to have multiple semesters across a wide variety of settings for them to experience prior to certification. And I also wanted to include in that note there of how what the various multiple forms of diversity are. And this is from INTAS that CAPE uses. So that the note included there, there are two main areas around individual differences, personality, interest, learning modalities, and group differences, race, ethnicity, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, and socioeconomic background, and others there that we've noted. So again, diversity and in its multiple forms, we address in our programs.
I'll go back and list those that you mentioned.
Just above, you have them in the note, yeah, right, just in the fifth
I see
bullet.
them. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Tucker, did you want to add anything to that?
Nope, nothing else to add. Thank you.
The next slide is focused on leadership and faculty collaborating with the lowest performing K-12 districts. I mentioned at the start how I'm also president of the state chapter for AACT, Connecticut State Chapter for the American Association for Colleges of Teacher Ed. Again, many of us work collaboratively with local districts and have long-term partnerships. I think that's critical. Again, there's a reciprocity there that's critical for the success of our programs and the future work of our districts. I wish to highlight that I do believe there's still more work to be done in this specific area where I believe we need to enhance our awareness and focus on how these partnerships can lead to closing persistent gaps. It hasn't been spotlighted enough in our collaborations, and I feel that's an area for improvement. But it is complex because there are multiple factors that impact academic achievement gaps, many of which we have discussed today, and the various forms that it comes in, not just in the classroom, but in engagement and culture and context. So I would wish to highlight that as an area of that I believe we could discuss further and see further improvement and growth.
Dr. Tucker, did you want to add anything?
No, thank you. I have nothing else to add.
The next policy recommendation is on formative and summative assessments. And once again, we are using a variety of formative assessments prior to student teaching, and the summative assessment during student teaching is now EdTPA, which is a performance assessment that evaluates competencies and skills. That is being used in all programs. Is required. There are cut scores, satisfactory scores that students have to achieve. This year there has been a waiver on that because of COVID. But again, these are assessments that we implement prior and during student teaching. I have nothing more to say on that point.
Dr. Tucker?
All my points are there.
Yeah.
Nothing else to comment about the assessments. Thank you.
There is quite a lot of overlap, I feel, in the policy recommendation. So there are things that have been discussed before around assessments that are relevant in various of the policy recommendations.
Okay, I'll move on to the next one then.
Yeah, thank you. As I just mentioned, see above comment on diversity. I feel that's relevant to what I was mentioning before around our commitment across the programs to diversity in many areas.
And Dr. Tucker, the same.
Same. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
What I will,
Yeah, Dr. Tucker, the next two focused on team and next gen. I'll pass it to you. I think you mentioned things already, though.
Sure. For this policy recommendation regarding team, just to reference that team continues to be recognized regionally and nationally for its positive impact on teacher retention, mentor training, and professional development. And districts are being encouraged to consider increasing team mentor stipends tied to specific expectations for the coming school year.
And the next one is on the next gen.
Yes.
And let me go to the next one.
Yep. And regarding this policy recommendation, we launched the State Department of Education launched the Next Gen program in November of 2020 in collaboration with Central Connecticut State University. This program allows for educator preparation students during the sophomore and junior years to work 2.5 days within a school district. We piloted the program in Bristol Public Schools with 20 students in the fall. Students must apply to become of the program. Once they are accepted, they are assigned an anchor teacher by the district. They received compensation equal to and sometimes more than the daily substitute rate, which averaged between $100 and $125 per day. This does serve as a clinical practicum for the students, giving them an opportunity to gain experiential learning and get paid for the work that they are doing. Due to the program's success, we had 4 additional institutions of higher education join us, and students were placed in 8 districts this past year. 4 of the 8 districts hired students to work this summer and are now asking for students to return this coming school year in the fall. The State Department of Education covered the expense of the background checks and the fingerprinting for the students, and we also collaborated with Black and Callus to assign a professional mentor to each student so that they could begin developing their own professional network. I have already addressed EdRising, and that program was launched last year in September of 2020. And basically, I'll just highlight that we seek to expose our students to the diverse field of education. It is a statewide grow your own model, and it is one of our ways of creating our own talent pipeline of future educators. We have been collecting data this year, and again, this coming year, we will focus on attracting more males and EL students into our clubs and curriculum. We have received funding for our second year from Buck, and we're also going to expand to include college visits, assistance with college applications, summer enhancement programs at our higher ed institutions and EPPs. And we will continue to work with our institutions of higher education to create the pathway for education. We are exploring the idea of students who join EdRising in high school to hopefully graduate if they pursue the education pathway with a maximum of 10 credit hours to enter into colleges and universities and hopefully EPP programs upon graduation. More information to come on that.
This recommendation on similar to the one for the educational leadership programs, again, a commitment to focusing on psychology of human behavior and relationships. We are committed to have several courses in educational psychology, socio-emotional behavior, and behavioral difficulties. Again, these are in all of our EPP programs. And that's this policy recommendation that I have from ESU.
And again, from the State Department's perspective, these are all topics that we have already discussed.
So are all of the policy recommendations in Inside Higher Ed. I would like to just summarize that there has been a lot of work and commitment to an agenda for closing achievement gaps, whether it's directly linked to our programs or indirectly linked. I do believe that we need to operationalize mechanisms to measure change. I would also go as far to say we need to be critical of how we measure and talk about academic achievement gaps. I think we need to look very carefully at what it means and how we're measuring it. And then based on that, again, a commitment to funding research and programs that help these communities, whether it's higher ed, working closely with school districts, State Department of Ed, or other family units. I think that's critical. And that's how I would, those are my final recommendations. In summary, and thinking ahead and moving ahead, and maybe we could spend some time in another meeting discussing what that actually means.
Well, I'll just say, Dr. Hegedus, that I think that there is a transformational opportunity with the $7 billion that is coming to Connecticut American Rescue Plan to have particularly alliance school districts that struggle with the opportunity gap to use funding for precisely some of these programs, particularly the one that you mentioned in Bristol, where you actually are paying students who want to go into the teaching profession so that they can have actual classroom experience in diverse classrooms and get paid for it and get educational credit for it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
I just had a quick overall question that I threw in the chat, but I understand there's so much information being rolled out that folks may not have an opportunity to view the chat section, and I didn't want to interrupt. But I'm curious, has the Minority Teacher Recruitment Policy Oversight Council been included in these discussions regarding policy recommendations?
Yes, they have.
And are in agreement? And specifically regarding the teacher certification piece, I know the Praxis 2 discussions have been, for lack of a better word, controversial in the past. And if there's talk of increasing those the requirements for subject specific areas, I'm just curious of whether they are in agreement.
We have had very robust discussions about that, and we are looking at alternate pathways to show success beyond the Praxis test or a specific test. So we have had those discussions. We have put forth some recommendations. Those recommendations were not acted upon this year. We will come back again next year with very similar recommendations.
Thank you. Happy to hear that.
And Deputy Commissioner, those are legislative proposals around this issue. So certainly we'll continue to have those conversations, and in this space as well. I certainly appreciate you asking about the Minority Teacher Recruitment Oversight Council, which is very much a part of these conversations, as Dr. Tucker mentioned.
And I will just add that you will find a very fierce advocate on this topic in Senator Doug McCrory, who is the co-chair of the Education Committee. So I would encourage you to have at it, because I know he feels quite strongly about that, because I have heard him speak on the floor of the state Senate about this very topic.
Thank you.
We've been working closely with Senator McCrory and Representative Sanchez this past year as well, with AACT Connecticut. It goes back to the point when we're talking about rigor and assessments and ensuring high quality. It also, we have to counter that with, how does that in what we use and how we assess and how we talk about it, maybe we're preventing access. We have so many of our APPs are accessible programs. So I think we have to be extremely careful that we're proposing or we're recommending a commitment, but sometimes we have processes or procedures that compete and maybe against the aspirations for minority teacher recruitment being one.
Okay, so I want to thank Dr. Hegedus so much, and we are trying to stay with our time frame of 3:30. So we're going to move to our next subject on a related matter that brings us back inside the schoolhouse, covering principal and teacher hiring and retention for schools that demonstrate persistent gaps. And the result statement is school districts with persistent gaps will be able to grow and retain the effective leaders and teachers they need. And we have Commissioner Russell Tucker to lead us in this discussion. Commissioner Russell Tucker, thank you so much for leading this discussion today.
And thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And really to pick up on something you said before, these policy recommendations under this topic all address providing incentives in order to improve, be able to grow and retain effective teachers, leaders, and teachers. And I want us to start out by sharing, and I know Dr. Tucker and Chris Todd, they've done a great job. For those of you that may have missed the announcement that we exceeded our 5-year goal for increasing the diversity of our educator workforce. And we say that saying we're not there yet, but it's good just to stop and say kudos for the job that's being done. And so with that in mind, I wanted Dr. Tucker to just talk about the incentives, some of which that we clearly, we're thinking about the funding that we have. And now we do have a funding opportunity based on the Education American Rescue Plan dollars that we have available to us. So Dr. Tucker, if you could just walk through kind of some of our considerations. First of all, the meeting the goal, just to speak briefly to that, because some of the programs that she talked about before was really what is helping us in that space, like the next generation work. So if you could just do that as an intro to this area and talking about incentives, that'd be great.
Sure, thank you. Yes, one of the things that I did speak about earlier was the next generation work. And we are encouraging districts to utilize funding to support students who are currently enrolled in our EPP programs and affording them the opportunities to work within their districts at the sub-rate or a higher rate, whatever they deem appropriate, at the 2.5 days per week, because it is really a win-win for both the student and the district with the experiential learning. Districts are also, that have been a part of this program, are utilizing this program, and they see it as a part of a recruitment initiative for them. Because if the student comes to your district sophomore year and they've done a great job with their anchor teacher and they've proven themselves 10 to 1, they want to come back to your district for their student teaching senior year. And once they graduate and pass their certification examinations, that district is ready to offer them a contract and hire them. So that's one of the areas. We're also, with our Ed Rising program, we've encouraged our districts to, we received a discount on the purchase of the curriculum through Phi Delta Kappa to purchase the Ed Rising curriculum this year to support 1 or 2 more advisors, really those that can help us to enhance recruiting more males into the field. We held several focus groups earlier this year with male educators, specifically male educators of color, as to what would it take to recruit more males into the profession. And so we know that mentoring is going to be a component of that, as well as exposing our young people to opportunities at the high school level via some form of an internship, whether it be at the high school level or at a middle or elementary school. And sometimes funding can be attached to that to pay the students to work, or it can be translated into a scholarship or assistance with fees that they incur to apply to college. So we're really trying to think out of the box with that. in partnership with our RESC Alliance, we have worked to reallocate a portion of our annual MTR Alliance allocation. So approximately $62,000 of our $262,000 has been used to directly support candidates of color, reimbursing licensure and testing fees, and providing over $22,000 scholarships for candidates enrolled in our Connecticut EPP programs. We're also encouraging districts to think about their paraprofessionals. We have paras who seek to obtain their certification, and we encourage them to have criteria, of course, and expectations defined up front, but they have an opportunity now to enroll paras in ARC programs and potentially pay a portion or half or all of their tuition, in which some of the programs averages $5,000 to $6,000 per year, which is a very small amount in the scheme of things. And that is another way that funds can be used, and you can continue to grow the education pathway with persons who are working within your schools. And we've gone as far as to push down and have conversations with some of our districts as to how do you lift up those parents who are working within your schools. I don't like this term, but we call them the lunch ladies, for those who do want to elevate themselves beyond that experience and move then to the next level of becoming a paraprofessional. What are you doing to invest in those? Because many times those persons working in that capacity are parents or grandparents within the community. And so you want to embrace and support them to move to the next level of being a paraprofessional if possible. Also, we're encouraging the incentives and the scholarships for students who are entering EPP programs. And we have worked for the past year with CHESLA, and we finally, the bill was passed and implemented regarding student loan assistance, specifically for teachers of color. And we will continue to offer the mortgage assistance programs that are in effect. But we're very excited about the student loan assistance program, especially for our teachers of color with the reduced rates. So that's kind of just an overview.
Could I just add to that? And because I think this is really important, that this budget that the governor just signed a couple of weeks ago includes funding for free community college. And those 2 years, those 2 free years, for students that qualify are really key to lessening debt for those that are interested. And then when they continue with their four-year degree, which hopefully is going to be at one of our state colleges and universities, that I think that goes hand in hand with what you're speaking about right now. So I would just add free community college for eligible students as well.
Yes, and we have also started that conversation because we've realized that there is somewhat of a disconnect between some of our community colleges and our EPPs from a student perspective to really understand what the criteria is. So we've tried to now foster and open the communications there because we want this process to be as seamless as possible for students.
That's perfect. Thank you. And so the last slide, I think, just continues on the same path of incentives. And again, we're looking at resources that we now have to create a universal approach for our programs and building on what we're currently doing, using forums like this really for ideas and thoughts and how we can have a more robust partnership across the board to really increase our educator workforce and also to diversify it. So those were the last policy recommendations. We're all incentive based, and you've heard now what we're doing. What questions do you have?
I don't have a question, and I know I wasn't responding agency here, but just to the point that was just made, we have managed to work very closely with New Haven Public Schools to utilize some of the recovery money the federal money that's come in, so that we can actually bring back para-educators to do their graduate degree and become certified with no expense to them. And again, that has been something that I hope we can see scale up in the future in creating, some kind of stimulus or funding packages to help our paraeducators become certified, particularly in shortage areas.
Well, the other thing I would add to that is going back to ARPA funding is that this summer the governor was, there were, I think, 1,000 college students that were given summer employment. And if we continue that next summer, I think we should think about focusing it on students who are interested in pursuing teaching, particularly some of the categories of teachers that we're looking for, and use that as an opportunity, because if next summer in Alliance districts that there are education programs funded by ARPA funding, why not have students that are interested in teaching in those employment roles? Because I know Governor Lamont is a huge champion of making sure we have diverse teachers and teachers of color, and that we've got those young people in our pipeline. So that would be a perfect opportunity to provide those incentives, maybe even credit as well.
No, that's great. I've heard nothing but positive reports from the College Core students who have gotten some training on social emotional learning and assisting students in camps and other programs. So it's a perfect place to leverage that as well.
Yep, because there are, and I visited these programs all over the state. For instance, I visited, one in Bristol where they have everything from pre-K programs in the summertime to elementary to middle school to high school programs. And what an incredible opportunity for those college students studying teaching to be working in diverse districts with and being great role models and learning about their craft or future craft.
Absolutely. So that's it on the final 3 slides, Lieutenant Governor, for this policy recommendation, the results statement.
Well, great. I want to thank you so much for your leadership and thank everybody for their participation in our meeting and discussions today. As a reminder, I want to give you the schedule for the remainder of our 2021 meetings. So our next meeting is going to be September 22nd, 2021 from 1 to 3. And then we will have a meeting December 15th, also from 1 to 3. So please mark your calendars. And for the September meeting, we plan to cover 3 more topics. And those are going to include first, students in state care, DCF, inside the schoolhouse, the role of time in closing the achievement gap, and third, inside the schoolhouse, narrowing the high-end opportunity gap, finding the missing advanced placement students. Sorry, that's a mouthful. And so if anybody has any other suggestions for guest speakers who can offer particular insight on topics related to our council work, please feel free to reach out to us. And I will ask if there's any questions or comments before we adjourn. Any other questions or comments? And I do not see any other questions or comments. So I want to thank everybody for participating, and we'll see everybody again on September 22nd. So thank you all so much for your participation.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
And we're adjourned.